Right, Danny Hill. Hi Danny, good to meet you, mate.
Nice to meet you too.
Now your role today, obviously we've got this huge march taking place here from Trafalgar Square in honour of quite a lot of guys who are in prison and allegedly for offences they didn't commit. And it's quite amazing the public passion, isn't it, and the interest in this now, and how all this is beginning to come to the surface. We spoke earlier to Kevin Lane and his family about the sort of doubts about sort of the fabrication of some of the evidence. Tell us a little bit about John Twomey's case, because I know that is obviously what your particular role is here today, yeah?
Well, John was arrested in the 1970s and in the early 80s. Basically, the police found a gun and some money that was from a robbery in his house, and it was found that the serial number had been basically been removed from the gun, shall we say, and only once they put the gun then under infrared, they found a serial number on it, proved the gun belonged to a policeman. So naturally, when he went to prison, well, they tried to send him to prison for robbery. Naturally, that case collapsed because it was proved that the gun wasn't his and it belonged to a policeman. Policeman then stood trial. They were acquitted, but it was all, the investigation into the corruption was all part of Operation Countryman, which was led by the Dorset Police. They had to come into London and investigate the City of London Police because of the corruption, various links to Masonic groups and those kind of things. And basically he was released, and so there's been a long-standing grudge. During Countryman, I think it was 400 police were forced to retire. No, none of them went to prison, but they were all forced to retire early or leave early. And yeah, and that's
all from this report.
That was from this. Yeah, this inquiry went on from 1977 to 1982. So this was a 5-year investigation by the Dorset Police.
Goodness. And how long has John actually been in prison then?
John's now been in prison for 18 months.
Right.
He was in prison. He was arrested for Heathrow Menzies robbery, and basically had an original trial. That was like a hung jury. Second one that also collapsed. It got to a third one. That collapsed towards the end as they were about to give the verdict. 2 policemen wanted to spend some time with the judge and had a conversation with him, and that conversation wasn't then had with the defence either, and it was alleged by the 2 police officers that the jury had been tampered with. Now, no evidence has ever been presented to the defence, no evidence has ever been made public about this, just purely that's what it was. And this is why the guys have got the PII, the public interest immunity, because that evidence is deemed to be, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's how it was acquired, no one would say. They wouldn't actually name it. Obviously you can't name a juror, that's totally understandable, but no statement has ever been produced anonymously from that juror to say whether did someone call them, did someone talk to them, you know, were they offered any inducement, nothing, no evidence has ever been given. And in a democracy, everything's supposed to be transparent, and you can't have a situation where someone's going to prison essentially on secret evidence, because although we didn't go to prison straight away on that, they then decided that they would have a judge-only trial, and then they did away with a jury.
Sure. And that was one of the first of those that's ever happened.
That was the first trial in England and Wales for 400 years about a jury, and obviously.
So literally, you've literally just got the judge and the prosecution and one of the defence.
I sat in there. It was very odd because you normally, when if you go into court, you watch it. There's a little bit of theatre between the 2 barristers to kind of show off, if you like, to the jury, and a little bit of one-upmanship and a bit of gamesmanship. But that doesn't happen because the judge has seen that all before, and it was literally just a silent, really silent, eerie courtroom.
What was the reason for that? I mean, was there a
purely they said that because there'd been jury tampering at that point. I think the total of the trials that had gone forward were, I think at the time it was about £25 million, which is, you know, 12 and a half times what was, you know, stolen in a robbery. It gets more and more complicated, but they had an appeal a year later, and the same judge who had been the judge for the juryless trial, he was in charge of the appeal. Now, I don't think he's going to overturn his own verdict.
Well, no, it doesn't seem like it.
And so therefore that's the other issue, that there are so many twists and turns in this, which essentially it just looks like a fit-up.
So basically now the plan obviously is you've got this march, this peaceful demonstration march, go to Downing Street, hand in a petition. Obviously there's a lot more publicity and awareness amongst celebrities backing it, you've got MPs and things. I mean, I guess now, what do you actually hope and pray is going to happen? I mean, obviously to be released, but is there a serious, I mean, you want the inquiry and the appeal to start happening?
An inquiry would be great, because there are so many things that are missing. And the PII is something that we've seen so many cases where the Kevin Lane guys were behind us. Again, evidence between with police corruption. That's been hidden under a PII. Another guy that joined us on a previous protest, again, something was planted in his house, and again, they hid behind PII. But only after he'd done 7 years, when upon a judge said, well, this is ridiculous, there is no evidence other than what you presented, and he released the guy. And that's how long an appeal takes, up to 7 years. And we've seen it with other friends that have joined us as well. There's a group called Justice for Sam Hallam, and he's been in prison for 7 years now. And it's so slow for an appeal to come to court when you have to have new evidence, which everybody has got new evidence to say this has gone on, that's gone on, this is why we need to look at this. But again, 7 years in prison, you know, in a democracy that it shouldn't take that long. If you know, but it's so slow, and now we're finding with the cuts to legal aid, that's making it a lot worse, because more and more people are having to defend themselves, file paperwork themselves. The courts are actually now becoming are going to become overrun with various complaints and everything else, as we've got amateurs working in the legal field. It's so slow already. I think we spoke to somebody and they said that the main building where they kept a lot of the records and ran most of the appeals, that's been downsized to a smaller building, and so case files and everything else have been moved left, right and centre. People don't know where evidence is and where paperwork is. It's truly shocking.
Yeah, and I mean now, how many of these sort of cases are you personally aware of, or have become aware of? You know, where allegedly guys are behind bars for something they're categorically denied they've ever done.
Well, I deal with the guys up in Birmingham called Mojuk, and basically they're a miscarriages of justice group. So I talk to them on a kind of weekly basis, and they do a really good job. If you go to the Mojuk website, you'll find there are dozens and dozens of cases, and you know, the Sam Hallam case is like I say, is a shocking one. I know I've met Sam Hallam's mum. Obviously, I know John Toomey's wife. I've had a little chat with some of Kevin's family members and stuff like that. But it appears to be something that happens not on a daily basis, but it seems to be something that
far more regular than it ever should.
Yeah, absolutely. That's that's.
And what do we do to eliminate this happening again? I mean, what's the government got? It's obviously got to be a government, has it? As well, got to
weirdly
be
enough,
here.
before the last election, which is when we had the original trial, we wrote to the Labour government, and they weren't interested at all. Right. We wrote to the Conservatives, who were then they were the shadow government, and we got letters from and emails from people like Ken Clarke. Right. I think Henry Bellingham at the time, he was in as part of that setup. He agreed that once the Conservatives got in, they'd overturn it. Nick Clegg also said that once if he formed the government, he would overturn this, so that you couldn't have that. They said there should be an inquiry. Now they're in power, they don't need to worry about that anymore, so they're now doing nothing. Right.
So basically now we're hoping that the awareness that this brings and the media attention, that something will at long last happen, yeah?
Yeah, you know, we've got some questions for the guys at Downing Street, which I hoping they're going to answer, you know, formal... We're okay to continue?
Yeah.
Basically, the formal confirmation of the identity of the police officers that gave the evidence, because that's not even been given. So they don't even know who provided the evidence to the judge.
It's amazing, isn't
it? As much detail possible with the evidence, because again, there is no evidence. Well, there is. If they say there's evidence, there might well be, but nobody knows what it is. How those officers were chosen to be appropriate witnesses, because there seems to be some of the guys who are involved in the News of the World scandal appear to have been involved in this case. Now, they're obviously not whiter than white, so we want to know what their involvement was and various other details.
And this is City of London police, presumably, is it?
It's Metropolitan Police, so yeah, Scotland Yard officers. The flying squad at Finchley Road appear to figure heavily in the Operation Countryman original trial. They also figure quite heavily in John's trial. Yeah. So it's making, if you make the law transparent and people know what's going on, there can be no complaint. It's like any conspiracy theory. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory, but if you have a conspiracy theory, it's because someone is hiding something. Whether they think they're doing it out of public interest or whether they're doing it for personal interest, you don't know, because they're hiding something.
No,
so that's where we're at.
It's an amazing story. All we can really hope is that at long last the truth comes out, and guys like John and Kevin, if they're genuinely innocent, they get out as quickly as possible.
I hope so, because I mean, John's got young children, he's got grandchildren, and spending, you know, they've put him in prison up in Durham, and his family live out in West London. Yeah. So it's a 6-hour round trek just to visit him.
Sure.
And you know, the kids are at school, and that's just not, you know, as a family, it's very disruptive. And at the end of the day, children are the ones that always suffer with these cases.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we hope it all goes well. Keep up the good work.
Thanks
anyway.
Very much.
Lovely to speak to you, and hope it goes
Cheers.
well.
Okay.
Cheers,
See
mate.
you later.